Hello, and welcome to today's online panel discussion on laser safety and protocols as we explore the best practices for safe and compliant laser operation. My name is Mark Elliott. I'm the COO of Europa Science, who is the publisher of Electro-Optics. Welcome to everyone today. The purpose of today's online panel discussion is ambitious. We hope to share some practical insights into laser safety requirements, hazard assessments, and of course, mitigation strategies. I'm keen that you learn how to improve or develop effective safety protocols, get on top of regulatory compliance, and of course, minimize risks in both industrial and research environments. There is a lot to discuss around laser classification, of course, protective measures you can take, and I hope we have some time to share some examples of safety practices in action. I'm pleased to say we have some very expert help to allow us to get to that objective. Three terrific speakers who I'm very pleased to be able to introduce you now. And we're going to let them give us a quick presentation as a way of introduction. But first of all, I'm just going to say hello to them and then to give you a quick summary of who they are, and then we'll hand over to them individually to give a quick presentation. So first off, and coming from our commercial partners in this online panel discussion, Kentech, can I introduce the company's market development manager, David Lawton. David has been in this field for more than 13 years and joined Kentech in 2021. His current responsibilities for all of the markets and sectors outside the US, Canada, and Mexico. He's worked in many product sectors, including science and research, industry, and medical, and can obviously assist in things like containment and controls, product classification, compliance, and training. He is an expert in international standards, prides himself on simplifying the approach to laser safety, and basically does that by giving an overview of applicable rules and how to apply them into a pragmatic way. So welcome, David, and over to you to give us a quick presentation. Thanks.
Sure. Just a couple of slides, just to show you. There we go. Okay. Just to let you know, I work for an American manufacturer called Kentech. The company is 40 years old, if you've not heard of them. It was the bit that always makes me smile. It was actually started by a Raytheon engineer called Mike, not Ken. So I don't know the Kentech bit, always a bit funny. We're currently the largest manufacturer of laser safety solutions. As Mark explained, we sell direct in the US, Canada, and Mexico, and outside there, we do a bit of direct business with the US, but mostly through a network of authorized distributors, or ADs as we call them. And our strap line has always been a strap line. It's laser people helping laser people, and that's been the case since the very beginning. Now, one second. Okay. The products we make and manufacture, pretty much anything to do with laser safety, all the way from eyewear through filter windows, many different versions and types of containment, interlocks and engineering controls, signs and labels, detection tools, alignment tools, and we also offer a very wide range of resources, including full training as well. And then a little bit about me. As Mark said, I've been working in laser safety for over 13 years now. Work in many different sectors and many different customers, and some really kind of out there stuff as well. Just a selection of customers that I've personally helped. So, you know, I'd like to think that I've got a fairly diverse and wide-ranging background.
Thank you, David. Right, next on to Federico Bonaldo, who is a physicist for the R&I department at Castellini. He did his MSc in experimental physics and joined Castellini's Solutions Research and Innovation team. For the past four years there, he's been developing his knowledge and applying expertise in high-power fiber lasers for material processing in industrial applications, including laser cutting, welding, scribing, surface cleaning, and ablation. Thanks for joining us, Federico. Over to you for a quick presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you, Electro-Optics, for this opportunity. I will share my screen right now. Do you see it? Yeah, Are you able to see it? Yeah. Okay. I will, if you don't mind, I will be a little bit longer since I want also to present some use cases and examples. I hope they will be of interest and they will give you some food for thoughts and maybe raise potential questions. So first of all, I want to tell you who we are and what we do at Castellini, and in particular in Castellini Solution. We are system integrators, and we develop and provide our customers with fully customized and completely automated turnkey machines and complete lines, which employ laser technology to perform laser material processing. And especially we work in the steel industry sector. We are active in the coil industry, in the plate processing industry, and in panel lines, for example, for shipbuildings. Here I can show you some of our laser processes and application in the coil industry, starting from laser scribing to laser coil-to-coil welding of similar and dissimilar coil materials. Passing to plate processing, where we can do laser trimming and laser welding of plates of different dimensions in width, length, and a lot of thicknesses too. Moving on to panel lines, on which we can perform a large variety of processes, highly tailor-made on our customer needs, starting from laser welding to laser cutting, laser marking, and laser coating removal, for example. So the common point to all these applications is the use of high-power fiber lasers. And therefore, we have the necessity to understand and correctly apply laser safety standards. But also, since we are system integrators and machine providers, we also do need to abide to all machine-related hazards, standards, and risk minimization, not only laser-related. I can think about mechanical hazard, electrical hazard, and in the next few slides, I will show you how we do that and how we are able to confine laser radiation and be safety compliant. So I would like to start with this process, which is laser scribing. And you can see on the top right our laser scribing machine. This machine employs two high-power fiber laser sources, which are classified as class 4 in the laser safety classification. So what we do to ensure to be safety compliant from the laser safety point of view is that we completely seal off the machine with a full enclosure in what we call a laser room, which is basically a laser control zone. So this safety measure, together with laser protective windows, physical barriers, doors interlock system, guarantees that no direct, neither reflected or diffused light can slip through the enclosed volume, allowing us to stay safety compliant, for example, for the safety requirements for laser processing systems, but also from machine directive point of view. So to complete the picture, what we offer to the customers, of course, we do give them, as we need to, user manuals and conformity declaration for all the apparatus. And on top of that, what we do is provide adequate safety training for laser and non-laser related hazards, as well as the standard operating procedure for machine normal usage. So for the second example that I wanted to show you, we are again looking at the employment of class 4 fiber lasers in a different machine and in a different design, in what we call extra wide laser welding line that you see on top right and also on the left side of the screen. In this case, we do not have a completely enclosed volume surrounding the machine, but we have a perimeter enclosure. So in this case, to ensure a safety compliant laser system, we need to add one more element to the picture. We do that with an Italian university by performing residual risk analysis on the laser hazards. In particular, we define the nominal ocular hazard distance for the diffused radiation that can scatter from the laser point of application of the laser source. This gave us the output, which is a complete safety risk assessment that gives us the input for the safety enclosure design, and again allowed us to be safety compliant for the relevant safety standards. The last example that I want to show you is about our laboratory, which is called Solution Lab. And it is actually the place where I spend the most time as a part of research and innovation team. Here, what we do is using high power fiber lasers. So again, class 4 fiber lasers to do a large variety of innovative processes, ranging from high thickness laser welding to laser cleaning to the already quoted laser scribing. But we also do some simulations and modeling of custom optics, as well as modeling and simulation for the optical path for unwanted laser reflection from custom optics to be able to block them. So even in our premises, we work ensuring a hazard-free environment by taking the already mentioned safety best practices and measures. And I will also give you a list of what we add when we are using fiber lasers of class 4 without the completely safety enclosure. We usually think about control rooms as well as laser protective curtains, maybe movable, that together with laser safety windows in our laboratory, as well as all the automation that helps us with interlock signals, optical barriers, safety limits and sensors and cameras, helps us to be safety compliant also in our everyday work in the laboratory. So yeah, thank you for the attention.
Thanks, Federico. That's a really interesting sort of insight on how it's done there. We'll come back to, I'm sure, some of those points later on. Finally, certainly not least, Scott Woolston, who is the president of Photonics Group, who has been involved in guiding clients from startups right the way up to global and public organizations since 1980. A real expert in integration and applications, and obviously particularly are in the area of compliance and safety for both light-based products and processes, particularly in the US side of things, as well as the international standards. A lot of work has been published in a whole number of very respected journals, so we're very happy to have you with us today, Scott. Over to you for a quick introduction, please.
Thank you. Okay. With me. So mine is really simple, sweet. I put it in a quad chart, make it easy for everybody to get the points quickly. Started the consulting practice in 1980. Used to sit next to Jim Rockwell at meetings. It was kind of fun. So we offer 3 basic service groups. We do development and integration. So somebody with a sketch that wants to put a laser or an LED into a product, we help them with their experiment all the way through to product compliance and LRIP, low rate production products. We do compliance and testing. We do also administrative functions such as audits and training. We do very specific customized training for very specific need. We don't have, large groups, whatnot. So a client will call us in and say, we're working on this new experiment. We need you to help us teach people. The markets and clients that we serve are all over the map. Part of our challenge is to find the best fit for our practice, but we'll get a call from a bunch of nuns trying to teach kids about laser safety, and then we'll get a call from a federal government agency saying, you know, we're working on the latest DEW stuff. So, you know, it's been all over the map. Our unique advantages, we represent Laser Safe PC in North America, which is a light safety hazard assessment software. We're on multiple committees known by the FDA, and also have partners in the NRTLs, the National Recognized Test Labs. So as someone's developing their product, we can hand them off to an NRTL to get them through all the product and safety compliance, so it's ready for market.
Scott, thank you. So a couple of takeaways from me here. I am looking for Ken, as in Ken Tech, and I'm looking for laser wielding nuns. So if anybody is fitting that bill out there, please get in touch. Which brings us on to a serious point. These online panel discussions are designed to be useful and interactive. So if you are watching live, we would, of course, welcome any questions from you too. So please submit them at the bottom of the screens, and we'll do our best to tackle them across what I hope will be a very full and lively discussion. Right, I have some questions, and we're going to start off with a fairly general one for everybody, which is about the biggest challenges you have come across in the past year or so when it comes to maintaining, say, laser safety protocols in your respective, as it turns out, geographical regions. David, I'll go back to you first, if I may. Oh, you're on mute. David, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry, that's better. The biggest single challenge we've had in the last 18 months, 2 years, is handheld laser application, particularly welding. Cleaning has been out there for quite some time, but handheld laser welding has just simply exploded. And there's no real way of containing the radiation. It's always going to be a class 4 product. And of course, that straight away means that the only way that you can comply with both rules in the US and the rules elsewhere are that you've got to apply local rules. And local rules are, you know, the lowest level of safety control, really. There's no way of engineering them out. And from our point of view, the other issue is the power densities that we're talking about as well. You know, hitherto a handheld laser welder might be 1 or 2 watts. Now we're talking about, you know, 1 to 2 kilowatts. And a trade show I was at last month, there was a 6 kilowatt unit. Now, whether they actually need a 6 kilowatt or not, but that then changes the ballpark in terms of how do you advise. I've always stood with the principle that the same rules apply regardless of how powerful your laser is. You know, you look at the risk, understand the hazard, and then deliver a solution that's commensurate with the risk. It's that simple. The problem we've got with power densities that are off the chart, how do you contain that radiation? And then what's made it really difficult for us are that the current international standards are not keeping up with the technology. The technology is moving faster than the standards. So for instance, there is a worldwide standard for welding, but it specifically excludes lasers. There is a worldwide standard for laser protective eyewear, but it specifically only covers eyes. It doesn't cover face protection. And that's where we've got this gap, this valley of death, if you like. So at the moment, for instance, a welding helmet, it needs to meet with a laser welding helmet. It needs to meet with the welding standards. But if it's got a big vision panel in the front, it can't match the laser protective eyewear because it also is a face protection. So the only way to get around that, if that's the right word, or the only way to comply with the standard at the moment is to have laser protective eyewear underneath a welding helmet. Even though there are welding helmets that do laser and welding, and we have one, don't get me wrong, but technically we can't comply, you know, we can't declare CE compliance because the standards don't cover it.
Wow. Sounds like the sort of story you'd see on a headline of a tabloid newspaper about the madness of the modern world, right? Scott, obviously you've got a kind of very broad perspective on this sort of issue. What's your take on this? If it's the same challenge, or by all means highlight a different one.
Oh, no, David's dead on. That's from a workplace user perspective. We're hoping that these products are compliant to the federal code, to the United States, to 60825. And some of these things are built, and it's hodgepodge. And and most of this is integrated, right? So there's the Asian builders of laser diode packs, the fiber packs, all that stuff is built in different countries. Then it's sent to somebody that integrates it. They're typically not compliant. The integrator's not typically compliant. It comes to the United States and it's an absolute mess in terms of compliance. Things don't work properly. They don't meet to any of the standards. And so what David was saying is like, okay, so from a user case, there's a huge thing, but from the equipment side, there's a huge problem as well. So it's just from stem to stern. There really needs to be, and I hate to say this because as an entrepreneur, as a a capitalist, I want people to build things and create wealth but there's certain times where perhaps we should put a pause on things, make sure that everything is safe and compliant before we bring it in. So the United States is very, very leery of these handheld laser devices because they just really are, most of them are non-compliant. And there are some, and David was bringing it up before, there are some that are US based that look really hinky as well.
Yeah.
And from a very frustrated process, Amazon and eBay are like the two biggest like floodwaters of these things coming in. And people will build these things in the backyard, kludge these things together, and then sell them. Have no idea that you have to go through product reporting and there are standards that you have to build these things to. So from the entire supply chain of this, it's serious. And for us in the safety world, it's frightening. It's literally frightening. Like David was saying, we had hundreds of watts, and all of a sudden it goes up to, kilowatts. and there are few detectors that you can't take a photometer and measure the same power that you do with like a couple watts. A kilowatt is just horribly powerful and a lot of energy. So
the other thing, Scott, I've seen quite a lot of products that are actually compliant with CE, 60825. So, for instance, the CE standard is typically more restrictive than the American standards, if you like. But even if it does comply, it's still a risky thing. It's still a dangerous thing.
Yeah. And even the operator, if the operator is somehow able to contain that, the person walking in next to them or the person walking past them are at risk too.
Yeah.
Right. So it's serious. It's a bad thing.
And Federico, from your perspective, I mean, obviously you're dealing with things perhaps in a slightly more contained way. This compliance issue, is this filtering into your kind of working life?
Yeah. Probably it's different. Let's say we have different problem or issues, but I just want to make some comment on the handheld laser welding because even to us, which are basically machine providers with all automated processes. So basically no human intervention, no manual movement or laser handling. This has come to our ears. So the fact that it is raising the application of this handheld laser welding, at least from some laser suppliers. So of course, one of the first comment, let's say, naive should be, let's move to more automated systems. But of course, I know it is very difficult to do that. Otherwise, it will not have so much spread about all over the world, this technology. But going back to what are our, let's say, safety issues with safety protocols, since we are dealing with customers, we are selling machines. Most of the times, our concern is about awareness about specific risks and hazards in in specific processes, but also in general with the laser. Because most of the time our customers are, let's say, in the first application or integration of a laser system, so they are not quite well aware of what they are installing, and of course this is where the difficult part comes. So of course it's our job to raise awareness and give comprehensive training, but also there are some for example, piece of information that can be maybe misleading, because of course we use near infrared radiation from fiber lasers, so infrared radiation is not visible. So sometimes we get some feedback that but I don't see anything. So yeah, that it's quite difficult, but of course it's very important. It's of paramount important to give complete to understand and check if the safety subjects are being understood correctly, and then they are used as a safety and standard operating procedure in the everyday work. And sometimes we get that for productivity issue, maybe the safety issue is being placed on the second place, and that is of course something that needs to be not done. So yeah, basically that's something that we need to face, and we are facing every time, and we are trying to change this mindset, of course. But another topic that comes to my mind is about laser related risks, about laser welding, for example, which are fumes and dust and their disposal, because sometimes it is underrated. It's a very pivotal topic, and in my opinion, it's very important to take also that into account, even in handheld laser welding and automated systems which are doing laser welding. Yeah.
Federico, interesting you should say that. The new version of ISO, which is 11553 Part 2, which is laser processing machines, for the first time has actually taken into account fume and fume hazards. Although it's not a laser-related safety problem, it's created by the laser, and they've added it for the first time ever. So it's in the, you know, the laser safety community are starting to understand that there's laser-related problems that are not due to the non-ionizing radiation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, right. It strikes me, you know, one of the questions that I'm always fascinated to find an answer to, because you come across this a lot in technology application as well as its development, is, I guess, the perfect solution comes from three directions, right? From the users of the actual equipment, the people actually on the ground, the corporate approach, which is we don't want any risk in our organization, or the governance approach, which is, you know, governments or trade bodies or whatever. Where do you think in this space, what leads? Is it companies with corporate risk at the top of the agenda, or is it governance structures, or is it actual people doing stuff that go, this is dangerous, I can't do it anymore, or whatever?
Right. So just using the UK as a little, you know, microcosm, it's coming from both the corporates being very risk averse, yeah, but also from what I affectionately call the laser police. So in the UK, our laser police are called the health and, you know, the HSE, health and safety, you know, executive. And they, for a number of years, have actually been advocating all laser applications should be contained in, you know, you've probably heard it before, put it in a box, School of Laser Safety. Now, there are some applications where you can't, but they advocate that that should be the default position. The default position there should be no accessible emission at all in any way, shape or form. And even to the point where if you're doing alignment or maintenance where you've got to have exposed beams, that should be done with a visible eye-safe laser. Yeah, and they're looking for the exception rather than the rule. If you want to work with open beams, they want to understand why, and they will challenge and push back. But of course, there's also the corporate side that are saying we just don't want to expose our company liability to the risk of that happening. So why don't we try and keep everything in a box? What's wrong with that? And then there's also one university in the UK that actually has made the change completely, and there are no laser protective eyewear, no laser safety eyewear purchased by this university or on site at all. Their standard orders are that nothing should be above a class 2 level of radiation in any of the laser labs, engineering, physics, you name it, that's it.
Wow.
And we're seeing that to a much stronger degree in Europe as well now, where they're asking for containment where in the past they never would have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for instance, and I'm broad brushing and generalizing, the German laser application, particularly in university, they're usually quite happy with a curtain. So they pull a laser blocking curtain around their application, and that's okay. And they're now starting to look at possibly using the curtains as a secondary barrier, having a primary barrier of some sort of enclosure or box on the table. Now, that applies for the industrial and the users that are, they know they're exposed to the risk and liability. It still leaves a grey area when it comes to universities and academics, because academics will generally do what they want to do. And trying to, it's a bit like herding cats sometimes, you know, where you've got academics that want to do it and a health and safety, you know, board that are saying, no, you cannot. You know, it's always a challenge. But I would say it's actually come from both sides. The legislative push down, and certainly the standards will help, and also the actual corporate governance as well.
Yeah. And Scott, from a US perspective, what does it feel like over on the other side of the Atlantic?
So the CDRH has come under like underwater because of all the flooding of non-compliant devices. So when I do audits, you know, one of the first things is, you know, how do you capture things that are non-compliant? As a LSO, you know, where does the liability stop? And legally, if you take something in your facility and it migrates, it might be a test setup or it might be a bunch of laser diodes that you bought for a setup and they're now part of products. The liability falls on you because you signed off on that. It came into the company and now you've promulgated potentially non-compliant products.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, we set up a form called the SLAP, which stands for the Suspicious Laser Product Protocol. And I gave a lecture on this at ILSC, and I got a lot of responses for this. It's hosted at Johns Hopkins, and it's also available on our site. We co-created it with the CDRH's review, so the links on that. So from a perspective of someone going, okay, I'm looking at this, and David will get this, and possibly Federico, when you get a product that looks kind of like not right, I don't know about you guys, but I open up the manual, and I could tell within 3 pages if it's compliant. They all say that they're compliant. They have the CE marks. They say that they're FDA registered, but they don't have specific things that I know darn well that they didn't go through the compliance process. So from a perspective of an LSO being a gatekeeper, you get these certain triggers and you look at it and you go, okay, now what do I do, right? I just bought this system. It cost me $500,000. What do I do with it? And people just let it sit on the dock. They don't know what to do, right? So you call the manufacturer like, yeah, we filed for compliance. I'll send you there's so much ambiguity in this. So we created this document and when you walk through it, it's actually a checklist on what to look for, what to do at each step, how to you know, contain it if it's non-compliant, what to do if the manufacturer doesn't want to play ball with you, you know, a hotline to the CRH to have them help you. Yeah, we see a lot of counterfeit devices coming in the United States, and it's a big deal.
Right.
And it makes the workplace even more difficult, right? I mean, ANSI Z136 is great, gives you all the things you're supposed to work with, but you collide that with non-compliant products that are purchased, you know, that everybody goes, okay, this should be compliant, but it's not. And now you have, for instance, in a university setting, you have PIs, right, principal investigators, who buy things. They're scope locked on getting their experiment done. They don't care. They're going to call Kentech to get all the stuff in. They're going to, you know, go to Thor Labs, get all their hardware in, and then they're going to buy a source from China that's never seen the light of any safety, industrial health, kind of any process at all. And then they're going to expose that to graduate students or undergraduate students. So now you have this poison cancerous thing that's dropped in a lab. Yes, it's a very complex issue. And it all starts with making sure that the sources are compliant to something, like they're built to something, they're filed properly. And another thing that's related to this that we're seeing, and David's probably seeing it as well, incoherent light is one of my big crusades now. I go through audits and people go, there are your lasers. We have 3 major standards that fall under lasers. There are over 50 all over the world for incoherent standard light sources. So someone buys a laser that's easily contained, they got the labeling, whatever, but they bought a 1 kilowatt LED lamp source, and they're wearing literally Oakley sunglasses because there's nothing talking about that. So it's the wild, wild west in the United States. European has the 62471, the LED standard. We have nothing. The United States says, well, if it's electronic, we have product reporting you must do, but there's no product performance standards for incoherent sources. So that is becoming a bigger issue. More and more people are reporting headaches, eye strain. I actually saw a 1 kilowatt LED bar processing, which is unbelievable because that's the start of that now being an industrial source. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the incoherent space that we need to keep our eyes on that have no requirements coming in.
Yeah. So, I mean,
sorry, even within CE land, you know, so the countries that follow CE, even if, you know, it's quite easy to justify or check whether something is CE, but a lot of the compliance, a lot of declaration of conformity are self-certification. There's no independent review, there's no independent check. But I mean, even if it is, there are still ways through it. There was one university that a PI that decided needed a laser with a specific wavelength, specific set of criteria. And that particular laser off the shelf was a lot of money. So he decided to make one himself. So he bought the diodes, he bought the driver, he got one of his PhDs to write some code, and he produced his own laser to do his experiment. And all the products he bought were all CE and certificated. However, because he made the laser emit, he actually made the university a laser manufacturer. And the university obviously didn't expect the liability or the responsibility and the compliance and everything they need to do in order to make this homemade laser technically compliant. And it worked out far more expensive than actually purchasing the finished product off the shelf. And that was all compliant, Scott. I totally get about the grey stuff that's coming in, but even fully compliant stuff has got a massive issue as well.
Yeah, it's the wild, wild west.
And I guess I sort of feel like I know the answer to this question, but I am going to ask it anyway. I mean, obviously for the OEMs and the individual end users, on the one hand, we've got a scenario where the regulatory framework is not keeping up with the technology, but how do they, what's the advice to people to try and keep on top of this? I mean, you know, while we've been talking, obviously there have been some questions coming in, and thank you, Scott, for answering those too. And I'll read those out more generally, if I may, towards the end, just so that other people can hear it. But what's the best advice? Is it simply talking to a company that can help, or you know, finding a professional supplier? Federico, I'll go to you first, if I may, and then we'll come back to Scott and David.
Yeah, of course. Maybe it's actually related to the last topic. So basically what we do is that we look always for trustworthy suppliers, and we always check for all the safety documentation. But of course, we have our limits, so we are no complete experts in laser safety. So sometimes even us, we need to look for third-party consultants. And so it happened in the past that we need to add some third-party consultant to help us in assessing the conformity and also the safety compliant of some laser systems. So I think that the best way to face these problems is that being informed keep you updated on the latest regulations, on the new updates, of course. And what we do for example, in our laboratory is that we actually even if we know the supplier, we don't trust the lasers. So we have redundancy systems in laser safety. We are very conservative in our laser calculations. We do put some multiplying factors when we do laser calculations to be sure to be on the safe, of course, on the safe side. And yes, and when we are not sure of something, of course, we ask people which have more expertise than we have in that topic. For example, I think the speakers in this webcast can perfectly fit that.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. And I guess going to you, David, if I may. I mean, Stefan has somebody contacted us on one of the questions and works in the university context. And the core of what he's saying is obviously balancing risk versus cost, which arguably talks to Federico's point about bringing third-party, experts in, is an ongoing challenge for a resource-strapped environment, as I imagine a lot of university research teams would characterize themselves as. So, how do you get the balance right, I suppose, is Stefan's.
It's difficult because finance is not accounted for by the agencies that are doing the policing. They are looking for if it's reasonably practicable or not, and the finance associated with that is irrelevant. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. The first one is that if somebody was to get hurt, and the level of litigation, the level of responsibility and compensation would far, far, far outweigh the costs of doing it in the first place. So technically, it's money well spent, if you like. But of course, I totally understand. I work for the laser safety company, so I would say that. It's money well spent at this point. However, there are some companies that are getting incredibly resourceful at methodologies or cheap ways of doing it. So, for instance, I've seen a customer that used a webcam and took out the IR filter so they could actually visualize their IR beam. Yes, it burnt out the CCD in their webcam, but the webcam cost $10. They threw it away and got a new one. There's lots of other ways that you can help to reduce the overall cost, but it's also getting to the stage where it can be less. I watched a presentation recently for a setup, a very, very, very powerful laser. It was a petawatt laser where they had an existing beam line, multiple beam lines. They had to replace it. And the guy in charge set his team the challenge of doing the entire change out without using eyewear in any way, shape, or form. The project to do the change out did take longer than it would have had they been able to use eyewear. But a lot of that was to do with the education and doing things in a different way to what they ever did before. But the learning experience they've made from that has actually given them the skill set to do it again tomorrow. Financially, it was actually less money than they would have spent had they had to use eyewear, and they've got all the resources that they would, that they can use on the next one. So it's obviously a case-by-case basis. I know that Steph has been working very closely in trying to, where possible, contain and having very limited access to exposed beams. And I've even been an industrial customer where they bought a laser pointer, arrow-dited it, glued it, epoxy resined it to a mount on their table so they can actually bolt it into exactly the same place every time and set their alignment up with essentially a laser pointer. And then there's also ways that laser safety can change the culture and change the environment. For instance, going back to laser cleaning, there's a company that are actually playing about with a longer wavelength for laser cleaning, which is beyond the retinal hazard region. And so the MPEs, so the maximum permissible exposure levels, are much, much higher. And so by using a longer wavelength, the requirement for eyewear reduces to potentially just the user. And if they can set the current, the parameters of the pulse train up, maybe not even the user needs to wear eyewear, just by changing the wavelength.
Okay. Okay. So there's a sort of sense of, test and learn and modify your approach as you go with this. I mean, Scott, where do you think, organizations are generally getting the balance right or not?
Listen, I always, when someone gets to the code word of saying eye safe and kind of like reducing the perception of whether or not a laser is hazardous to or not, I always get cringy. I think most of the people getting involved in safety overall are sophisticated in it. There's enough resources out there. It's not 2 or 3 guys that are sitting there going through 700 pages of standards and calculating things anymore. We've got software for that. We have committees for that. You can belong to blogs. The CRH has, there's RadSafe. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can go out and get information, at least to step back from the edge. And I'm sure Dave will second on this, but the most hazardous people on the planet are the ones in the labs, like by far, because they're used to it. They're
Complacent.
They're complacent, yes. And so the guys that are, the welders, God love them, are given brand new tech. And I know several welders, and these guys really care about their safety because they're so used to like not sucking in fumes. So they're looking around, they're going, okay, I'm not going to just strap this thing on and blast things. Where you see that is where people are trying to sell, like they're in the sales mode. Like if you get on TikTok or Instagram, they're like, hey, it's perfectly safe. See this with flip-flops and earrings and just sunglasses and no gloves. And the LJACs, the laser generated air contaminants, are huge, right? And that stuff is blasting up in your face. So there's got to be extraction. So I think, in answer to your question, I think there's a good balance, because most people really want to do the right thing, and they realize that it's a hazardous type of thing. Where it gets into trouble is the advertising and the companies marketing these things as perfectly safe or compliant, and most of them are not. And so it starts off, like I said, with the equipment itself, and then it promulgates into who's setting up these environments. Well, the laser is perfectly safe, so all we need is just a standard welding curtain. That should do it, right? And in fact, it most often doesn't, and then people get into trouble. And I always make the comment of the safety timeline for light-based hazards is at the speed of light. It's not like a milling machine where there's something that's going to catch your tie and pull you in. You have time to cut it. Anything that happens that's hazardous happens at a speed of light. It doesn't take more time than that. So that's the issue, and most people don't have the equipment to measure that. They're not used to dealing with those types of things.
Yeah,
so
and especially at that sort of pace, right? It's instantaneous. Yeah, it's a very good core safety message. I would suggest that one. I'm going to, conscious a little bit of time. We've got obviously 10, 15 minutes or so. I want to just rattle through a few quick fire questions, if I may, which were things that we identified that we wanted to talk about. I think we've covered quite a lot of this. I wanted to talk quickly about misinformation and misconceptions about class 1 lasers and the risk to eyes and special precautions. Is there anything about the class 1s that people really need to think about if they're not used to using that type of equipment?
This is one of my pet hates, one of my things that annoy me massively. So the classifications were set depending on the damage that a laser can do to the human body. That's where the breakpoints were set. And class 1 is one of two things. Class 1 is either unconditionally, well, it's always unconditionally safe, but that could be for two reasons. Unconditionally safe because the power is so low that it just won't do any damage to the human body, eye, skin, whatever. But then there's and this is the bit that really annoys me, class 1 laser device. So if we have a DVD player at home or a Blu-ray player at home, inside that product, you've got a dangerous laser. But because it's, you know, involved, it's interlocked, it's inside, that is a class 1 laser device. And my litmus test, I hope that translates to everybody, is a class 1 laser device is only a class 1 laser device if you could give that to a 5-year-old child and ask them to find the laser, and they're unable to do without a tool. So there's a lot of companies that call their product class 1, when in actual fact you could climb over the barrier and get into it and get access to the radiation. A class 1 laser device is unconditionally safe. That's the point. You know, and you can buy it without, whether it's got an embedded 20 kilowatt laser or whatever, it doesn't matter. You do not need to fill out any risk assessment or anything else, because you're buying, in essence, another CD player for the conference room. But there's a lot of companies out there that claim class 1 laser device, when in actual fact it simply is not a class 1 laser device.
Interesting. Okay. Federico, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with David, since we actually are providers of laser systems, which basically are class 4 laser sources, which are then enclosed in a particular way that no laser radiation can slip through. But yeah, as David said, they should be foolproof and childproof. So that's what we want to achieve every time that we make and sell a machine. And yes, usually the best thing that I can think about, as the example with the complete enclosure that you saw, you maybe saw the entering and exiting aperture for the coil, which has been processed. And I can show you, I can tell you how we deal with that aperture, which in principle, it seems like radiation can exit from that point, but actually we have some mechanical parts basically blocking the radiation on the inside of the laser room, because we are raising the level of, let's say, the pass line of the coil processing, so that we have basically covered all the space below that, and the laser radiation is physically blocked by mechanics, by steel from below, and it's reaching only on top of that, but the top is covered by all the enclosure. And if you want to enter the enclosure, you you have no means to enter without having to act with the safety interlock. So that's I think that's the only way to have a completely safe laser system, which can be assimilated to a class 1 laser system. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we've had a comment in just from somebody about the fact that class 1s in universities are often serviced and maintained, so they are treated as a higher class embedded. So there is some sort of mitigation approach, at least.
As I say, it's a CD player, really. It's
Yeah.
a Blu-ray player, albeit it may be the size of Federico's box, but it's a Blu-ray player.
Yeah. And just generally, I think crystal ball moment. I mean, one of the things that's often kind of comes out of these discussions is, where's this all going? You know, what if you had a crystal ball around where incoming laser safety processes are going? How would you summarize that? I'll start with you, Scott, then I'll come to David, then I'll go to Federico. What's down the road? I mean, obviously you've got a particular context in the US at the moment you were explaining.
Yeah, so I'm working on a research project with Johns Hopkins University called the Verisa program, and it virtualizes safety. So before you get presented with the hazards, before you even spend $1, there's an input deck. You load in your CAD drawings, and you can actually move virtually and see under what standards, what classification, what hazards you're going to encounter. And so that drives a whole bunch of things down the chain. I see, here's the thing, anything that's driven or bound by standards is a perfect target for AI. There's no ambiguity. You're not going to sit there and go, well, it's kind of like this. No, if it hits a certain threshold and it triggers a certain classification, it's done. Now, you can argue where those classifications come from on the committees, but once it becomes a standard, once it becomes a regulation, it's a defining rule. It's almost like machine language, which is kind of where AI is, my prediction. So I'm thinking that things are going to move quicker. I talked to David and other people in the laser safety field that were trying to get together to produce a common standard so people could plug machines in. They get the same kind of, we're all on the level playing field as to how to assess standards and how to alert people through signage. And all this information could ultimately feed back to the regulators and the standards committees. So now we can tighten this up, because there's a lot, going back to the original point of yours, is there's a lot of misconceptions on things. I was just in a committee and someone brought up the fact that, well, if you build one system, there's an exemption. There's no exemption for one system in R&D. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the federal code, doesn't exist in any standard. And so, but the industry says, well, you're just building one, and it's in an R&D lab. When I do audits, I find people building one, and then maybe two, maybe three test sets. And now all of a sudden the division's grown and they're sending this stuff over, which is the definition of manufacturing. But just because they built it in a lab and it was one-off, it's okay. So we're trying to tighten that stuff up. Incoherent sources, coherent sources, intelligence, it's all happening. We're at the very interesting inflection of the industry right now. And so I think there's the best way to get involved or get ahead of these types of things. Like I said, there's blogs that you can belong to, volunteer time on the committees, right? I mean, that's where these things start, from ANSI, the TC committees. You can get involved in developing the safety language that we're all talking about. And that's probably the best place to be. Go to ILSC, go to DOE LSO workshop, which happens, I don't know if you guys, ILSC happens on odd years, DOE happens on even years. And those are the two main workshops in the world, from what I understand, that focus in on this. And your attendance would help a lot. We want to have users, actual users. These things are typically heavy research and heavy federal lab users present stuff there. It'd be kind of nice to get people that are like welders, like, you know, people in the industry coming in, presenting and getting information. The same people, you know, I love my brothers and sisters in this, but David will agree, you know, it's the same faces, right? We want to get other people involved in this.
Okay. And I guess that speaks to another point that has come in, you know, while we've been talking about, you know, where the record keeping for when this goes wrong is kept. You know, is there a central way? Well, I guess the answer is it sits within those bodies, right, where they kind of assess what's happened here, there, and everywhere.
So here's something that's interesting. So you have to understand how laser safety, how all these things started. Part of it's is fable and some of it is not, but it really started with a bunch of guys shooting each other in labs with lasers. That's really where it all started. Okay. And it grew from there. And then ultimately what happened is we started looking at, you know, large things that have happened. Like, lasers really weren't of issue because they were research tools. They didn't really get into industry. And when they got into industry, then it was like, oh my gosh, that was 74. That's when the federal government said, okay, we really need to start putting something down on this. So there's this tribal knowledge that covers from part A to point B, and some of it is it's not accurate, but it still follows us through. But it adds to a colorful history. But yeah, the industry is rabid. And oh, by the way, what is it? It's projected in 2 years to be $1 trillion industry. Photonics, it's $1 trillion industry.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, there's going to be a lot more activity. But what I'm seeing is quantum stuff, which is really what, like Dave was talking about, that's class 1. That's on a chip level. It's not really a hazard or a safety issue at all. But there are things that are happening, like the DEW space. DEW lasers, directed energy weapons, is taking off, and it's not just US based, it's all over the planet. And so that's a big issue too.
Yeah, I guess it's another example of geopolitical context crashing into industry and technology.
The geopoliticals just supercharged the development.
Yeah,
it really has. I mean, it's just, and of course I remember that funnily enough, Scott, there is a forum in the UK called the Laser Safety Forum. It happens in September, and they try and get, I'm going to say, normal people rather than guys like you and I presenting, just to make it more interesting, more involved. But I remember a presentation from the Chief Laser Safety Officer for the UK Joint Forces a couple of years back, where his presentation title was, "You want to do what?" It was yeah. So it was like, in the past they fired a laser into the ground, into a mountain, and now they're wanting to fire it into space. And that's. I mean, to answer your question, Mark, where is the next step? I don't know. AI has a real part to play. And funnily enough, I was at a conference recently where they were talking about material processing and how and there's just so many different things you can do with a laser now, and hooking that up to AI, and then actually real-time close looping it, so it's changing everything on the fly. The biggest question that was asked, and the one that nobody could answer, was what's the next generation of laser engineers going to actually need to know, other than how to push the big green button?
Yeah.
Because the machine itself has already learned and has overtaken the knowledge that people got. Will that help with safety? Pass. I don't know. The problem is it a safety protocol that you can trust? And you ask Federico, he'll have dual channel, he'll have cross mismatching detection, he'll have diagnostic indication of all the interlock inputs, all of that functional safety stuff that's designed to make sure that if something goes wrong, the system fails and terminates the mission, keeps people safe. Will that be handled by safety, by safety software? Safety? Oh, don't know. That's a big grey answer.
Well, I think we're all kind of aligning ourselves for a revisit to this topic in a couple of years' time, see where it's going. Federico, I want to just go to you finally as to wrap up on this. I mean, either from a corporate perspective or indeed from your own personal thing, any thoughts about where this is going from your perspective?
Yeah, yeah. I can just make one comment about the last subject about that David talked about. Yes, I think that the most important thing right now, but it will be also in the future, is keeping the awareness, the comprehension on the subject, on the laser safety measures. We need to be informed to do something, to do the correct way. There need to be some people that need to know what to do, of course. But yes, on the near future, yeah, it will be very good to exploit these this digitalization that the world is subjected to from the point of view of AI, as also Scott and David talked about. That's a very promising point. But I was also thinking about simulation and I don't know, virtual reality as a kind of visualization of the safety areas, nominal hazard area, nominal hazard distances, but also the different levels of I don't know, coherence, Rayleigh ranked beam properties. That's a lot of stuff that can be done, and these are not only for the safety, let's say, for the safety, but also they can be also a tool for sharing, let's say, and making the safety more appealing to everyone. Because what, from my point of view, what we lack, since we have the use of lasers so widespread around the world, we need to have laser safety widespread as well. And to do that, we can make use of digitalization, the easiness of exchange of information, like marketing, of course, in a better way, because we are talking about laser safety, and it's of paramount importance. But yeah, we can make it appeal so that we can promote and we can help people that are approaching lasers we can help them be informed and be conscious about what they are doing, and to avoid doing mistakes. But because I think that's my opinion, that most of the mistakes are human errors. So that's what we need to do, even in the future, if we have all the AI tools and simulation and digital tools. That's what I think. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's a very good point. Humans use this technology. Humans are part of the solution to avoid the problems, e.g., the message I'm hearing most clearly, quite apart from the obvious stuff around using expert advice and keeping an eye on the legislation, which is changing fast, is to get involved in this debate and to share your experiences, because from that collective understanding will come better insight and then hopefully better legislation. We have run out of time, I'm afraid, unfortunately, but for what's been a really lively, interactive session. So thank you for those people that have asked questions while we've been talking. Just a couple of things to close off. So the online panel discussion will, of course, remain accessible on the Electro-Optics website. That's electrooptics.com with no space at all. And then it will eventually appear on our YouTube channel. So we'll create an article about this in due course. So please spread the word among your colleagues if you've enjoyed the presentation, because it's available to watch going forward, and an article will be coming up soon. Thank you very much to our presenters, David, Federico and Scott. Obviously the Europa Science production team, who's been working away hard in the background, and obviously Kentech for their support in making this happen today. Thank you to you watching. It's always difficult to find the time to watch and take part in these things, so your engagement is very much appreciated. Keep an eye out for future sessions. Next week we are talking about the area of quantum photonics. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you online again at another one of these. You know where to find us, and I hope to see you there. So thanks very much to everybody today. It's a great session. I've really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.